Everyone. I think a while back we did the AirWave demo, so I'm happy to come back and give you a refresh on what AirWave's been working on for the past year or so. I'm the product manager. My name is Sujata, and I've been with the product for a really long time, pre-acquisition as well. I just realized if I stand behind and I navigate through the screen, you hardly would see me at all. I could hide myself behind it. But anyway, so going to UCC and the visibility that we have, so one thing we did when we were rolling out the changes with the controller side integration with Link SDN API was the visibility aspect. It's the first thing that customers did, and when we talked about last year too about client health and client match, visibility was going to be important in knowing what is happening with the network. So this home UCC dashboard, that's a new page we built, and the controller has similar data as well. That's more real time, and AirWave's more for the historical, and also for a large network. You just don't have one controller that is serving link calls and doing link traffic. So being able to aggregate all that data and show it in a dashboard at the same time, drilling to a specific location is what AirWave provides. So most of the AirWave dashboards have historical information. You can see I'm looking at the 2-hour data. There is 1 day, 1 week. We keep the data about 4 weeks, and we're also working on reports and alerting as well, so that you get the whole feature set linked with Link itself. So here we have the time period. And what you're looking at is these gray dots are actually inactive calls, so calls that are completed, and the blue ones are actually the active calls that are there, and then we can give you a drill down sequence from these active calls into troubleshooting them more. There are 4 different widgets here, a lot of different data. We have the way we filter the data so that it's useful for you to consume. You can see that there is a correlation of just the calls and how they're having a good quality or a poor quality. We correlate the call quality with the client health itself, which I talked about earlier as part of Adam's slide. But that is important in isolating whether the UCC call quality is related to the Wi-Fi health or not, and related to the UCC score itself. And then we have the call volume data and the devices too. This is important because different devices, I think someone brought up in the audience saying, different devices have different problems or different, for example, a new iPhone comes up, the link issues that you're seeing may be totally different than what you're seeing on a Windows 7 or other devices. So being able to give you some kind of trending data on where are the issues, what device types are they associated with, is something else that we are providing with this dashboard. So here I'm going to go ahead and do a 2 hours, so we have fewer dots in there. I have a number of people who are on active calls, as you can see. I can drill down into one of them. The other thing we also have is the details on the call itself. So while you're looking at it, the dots are good, but being able to look at the exact users that are on calls, what is their call quality? Are we doing a QoS correction? Has this user roamed while he's on a call? Is something that this table is providing, and you can filter on and look at any of the details of this data. So here, just to show you the kind of troubleshooting and the trending, the drill down view you have, if I take any of these users who are on a call and I click on that blue dot, it's actually taking me to that client diagnostic page. The client diagnostic page is important in troubleshooting clients end to end. Now we've added the UCC aspect to it. So if someone calls the help desk and is calling about some link problems, they're able to get the big picture in terms of the client and their experience on the Wi-Fi itself. So all this information, you probably should be familiar from your last thing in terms of client diagnostic, gives you the whole hierarchy from the wired to the wireless side. We build that hierarchy as well. We have current association, we have the user on a floor plan, and we have the calls that they went through with this Wi-Fi session. So you can see the calls that are there, and for the active call, the details of the call itself, being able to get to the jitter, the latency, and the packet loss while this person is on the call, along with other metrics like client match. Client match is a feature unique to Aruba, so giving you that information as well. Did that client go through a client match event in order to get a better client experience? Making sense so far in terms of troubleshooting?
Does that help with your question earlier, or should we have Bala jump in more about what happens on the controller with client match as relates to this?
I mean, I'd like to know more, I mean, specifically around, you know, Air 2.1x roaming, right? And the key exchange that has to go along with that, especially how, you know, what does client match do in order to alleviate or mitigate the need for Air 2.11r, right? At the packet level. right? Because that's what I'm hearing is that we don't need 802.11r necessarily because we have client match, and I don't know what the two have to do with each other.
No, I think client match is, if I can just quickly jump in, client match is not a replacement for the roaming algorithm today, right? In the current deployment that we have in 1344, OKC PMK caching is on by default. We also have 11R turned on by default. Obviously, 11R is for all the iOS devices.
You do have 11R turned on.
We do have 11R turned on by default.
Okay, so that answers it, right? And so the answer to your question is, how are they doing fast secure roaming? The answer is 802.11r.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't think we heard that previously.
Sorry if I missed that. So we do have 11R turned on by default. Windows devices do OKC PMK. So based on the device capabilities, one or the other kicks in. Now that being said, how does client match handle link traffic? Client match by default has link intelligence per se. If a user is on a link call, it's not going to try to move that particular client. So it's going to let the client's chipset take decisions on which AP it has to move to. So the answer to your question is, if I'm on an iPad, I'm walking down from level 2 to level 1, it's all going to depend on my device's capabilities. And PMK caching is obviously going to help with reducing the number of transactions that needs to happen with .1x.
For the non-802.11r clients. Okay.
So, while we're on the client match thing, just another client match question. So the client match is going to send what kind of frames to a client to get them to move, and what if the clients choose to not move?
So today, two things, right? Today for client devices that does not support 11K and 11V, we send a deauth client. We basically orchestrate a move ourselves because we build a database of what are the candidate APs that this particular client can see, and which AP is the best possible AP that it should be associated to. We know these two information, right, which is critical. Based on that, we orchestrate a move by basically taking a client off and by asking the APs that don't let this client in. Just the AP where we think it should associate to, only that AP lets him in. Does that make sense?
I think something to add to that is we do have a sense of when the client refused to move. I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have an idea that this client is not responding to ours, and we back off. Because we don't want to get to the point where the client, I mean, we've seen some clients do that, where repeatedly, if you try to do a match event, then they get into a state where the wireless almost, it stops seeing that SSID and things happen. So that's why we have a back off, and we also have an attribute where we mark it unsteerable. We do have that attribute.
How sticky is that blacklist at that point?
Meaning, how does it persist, or how long does it?
So if you have a client that refuses to move and it says, okay, I don't want to kill it, so I'm going to back off on my moving.
How long do I wait for it?
Is he stuck in that mode forever, or is there a
I think
timeout?
there is a certain timeout for it. I don't know the exact time period. I know it comes out of that state periodically, not too aggressively, like in a day or something. But I know that
I think
there's
we have the data.
think
So there's something I'll have to go back check with our RF guys. But I believe we saved that data for a few days, just to ensure that we are not trying to move this unsteerable client who might not like the deauths that we send. I mean, iOS devices some of the iOS devices running a few iOS versions are.
And we do have a report in AirWave that gives you the unsteerable clients. So people have an idea on which of these clients are in that state and why, and if there is a device type to it.
From your data you've collected, are there some clients that are less steerable than others?
Right.
That was the question.
Is there a device class that we see being less steerable than other clients?
I've just seen in some high-density deployments, some devices that are just
So it again depends. At least based on what I've seen, and what I've heard from the teams, iOS devices, depending on what version they are running, do not like to be deauthed off the network. Mm-hmm. If they get X number of deauths within a few time period, they blacklist that particular ESSID. So those are the devices that we mark as unsteerable, and we don't touch them. We just let them do their thing. Windows devices have been mostly to client match based on what we have seen. Androids have also been, the older versions of Androids prior to 4.0 has had a very sticky behavior, and then they're okay with client match. They like the behavior. When we ask them to move, they move. post 4.0, we have seen that Android has improved their roaming algorithm in general, and they do some constant scanning and proactively try to do it by themselves.
Yeah, I just noticed some of your previous slides had Windows,
Yeah.
OS 10, and no iOS.
Yeah.
So it was, and that's not what I see in the marketplace.
Oh, as far as device
Device
count
type,
in these, yeah, I think we aren't looking at the unsteerable client match statistics here. We haven't brought that up, and we can. But I don't know what network this is on to count
So the stats
the
that,
actual device types you see on this.
Yeah, the
AirWave
stats
server.
that you probably saw was from the UCC dashboard. And
Yeah.
I think most of the laptops that we hand out are, majority, I think,
I
is
think
Windows.
internally, especially in the enterprise, you'll probably see more Mac OS and Windows 7 because most of them have a laptop that they're using.
So from the link, I mean, it was highly link focused there. Does that mean people are using their Windows machine or their iOS phone for their link client?
I think it's a mixture. But
I would say most of it is happening, at least at Aruba, I feel like it's Windows 7 and the Mac OS that people are actually making the calls on. And
Rather than a handset.
rather than an iOS phone or a mobile phone, I feel like most of them. But you will have a mix. I think that mix will keep changing. I think fewer people have a link client on their phones. At least I haven't done that because it almost becomes a kind of an extension of your work into your home. But I think that's going to get common, and you'll probably see that changing over time, definitely. I would think so.
Sorry to.
Oh, no, not at all.
No,
The
please.
Q&A is good because it keeps it rolling much faster. So this was essentially your help desk kind of troubleshooting link and Wi-Fi issues. What we also have is the details. So one thing that happens is historical data. What happened to this client over a period of time, and how do you track how this user experience is? And being able to look at the client detail itself, and also being able to look at the past UCC calls that have happened, and to see their history, what call quality, what's the client health, whether the call is active or not. The other thing we also have is, I don't know if we've seen this before, is we can do low-level troubleshooting from AirWave itself. You don't have to log into the controller. You don't have to train your help desk person to say, this is how you log in, this is how you run CLI commands. You can actually run these CLI commands right here. For example, if I was to say, show me data path session table, I should be able to, where is the pop-up line? Sorry. I'm not sure where the pop-up. We'll get back to that. But essentially, it'll pop up a screen and it'll run the CLI command on the controller, and you can see the output of it. Let's see. Yeah. All right. So the next thing is the client itself on the floor plan. You can actually see where that client is on the floor plan while he's having the call, and what the call quality is for that client. So you can see here, there is the client located, and you can see that as far as his properties, information on where this client is, what device is he using. But the other thing we've added is this replay location history. So I'm not sure if you've seen this, but our CTO always comes back after 2 hours after the call is done, and he says, 2 hours ago, I was sitting at my office and I had a bad experience. How do you troubleshoot that if you're an IT? So the one thing we added was a link mobility trail. So you can actually see here, while this client is going through his sessions, you can see on the right side what these sessions are for the client. You can see the client moving, and the overlay that you see essentially is your call quality that that client is having at a certain location. So you're actually tying location to the link call quality itself, and that's what you're seeing on that floor plan.
Question for
Yes.
AirWave, is there any additional licensing for link support?
No. It all comes with the same. We actually previously did have for Visual RF, but that also is gone. So AP device license includes Visual RF and VIPs and everything else, and new dashboards that you have are essentially coming with it. Yes.
AirWave integrated into a Cisco infrastructure?
There is no visibility right now into Link. It's Aruba and AirWave together as a solution. Yeah.
Is it possible in the future?
Heuristics is unique to us, and SDN API integration is also unique to us. So.
Most likely not. We'll probably stick with Aruba and AirWave and Link as a unique solution.
Now, what if we all pool what we have in our wallets?
And then pay
And buy a bunch of Aruba gear.
I'll take that as a compliment that you like AirWave for that.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
Yes.
So this is really cool, and I like how this actually works. But do you go into greater depth of what's happening with the client at that time? Can you show? Does it show like a trail the RSSI to show the data, what's happening while he's moving around?
So that is not in Visual RF. We didn't want to kind of put a lot of data, but you can definitely drill down. Actually, you can stop at any time, and if you do that, you currently get only the location data and the UCC data,
Right.
but there is a point where you can look at the client's association history and you can get that information.
Oh,
You
perfect. So we can get that greater detail of the client, what it's doing at that time over that hour's time.
Yeah,
Right?
you will get all the, like for example, I don't know if you saw that, if I am on this client, I do have the association history of that client itself. So you can see
perfect.
UCC calls here and you get that. And I've hidden the columns just so that the table's not wide, but all the low-level details are in that, the client association history itself. And then you can generate a report for that client as well to know through the sessions and look at it if you're doing kind of like postmortem on what happened to that client.
We also do a little bit of troubleshooting with the client to see, why it's not associating or why it got kicked off.
So like a synthetic transaction with the client. Currently, it's
Dig
not
deeper.
possible. You can put the client in a debug mode though, and then initiate another thing, and then you can dump that data onto AirWave and collect it. That is definitely possible. You can put it into a live debug mode.
And the APs can be converted to a remote packet capture tool and just do regular sniffing using an access point.
Yeah, I'm more interested on the client side, right? I want to see what the client's doing and what that client is actually experiencing.
Actively during when they're having an issue.
Exactly, because then I can see, okay, he's roaming from this AP to this AP. Why did he roam, or why is he getting de-auth, right? And I want to see that, because it really helps, right? We can generate that report.
Client match steering events should have that information, right, Sujata?
What's that?
The client match steering events for a particular client in the client diagnostic page should have that information.
Oh yeah, that does too. I can show you that real quick.
But there's also a Aruba app for Android that actually can link back into AirWave, and you can on your client see
Correct.
both what I see the AP and what the AP sees me at the same.
That's absolutely right. The Aruba Utilities also has a way of posting it. But this is what Bala was talking about, where you're going through the client match events for that client and the reason behind the client match, whether it was a success or failure, going back to your point about not every client match is successful, and there's a from and the to AP, which is actually very helpful in figuring out did that client end up having a good experience or not. So this is something that we publish just so that you can track, and we have a report as well that gives you for the client match events.
Just suggestion, why don't you do S and R? Why don't you do to, from, differential?
That's a good idea.
Because
I know
I'm trying to do it in my head this way, and I'm like, you could just add the number right there.
The reason the differential may not entirely be positive, like for example, if it's a sticky client, you'll definitely have a difference. But if it's a load balancing or a band steering, you may end up to a cleaner channel and a less loaded AP, though your signal strength might drop a little bit. So the differential may be positive or negative, depending
True,
on.
but it would just be a quick
It'll
way
be easier to
yeah,
say
just
what's
a
the
column for
benefit.
it, just
I completely
data
agree with
point.
you. Yeah, good point.
That's a good point.
All right, so going back to it, I did want to show off Visual RF a little bit. We did convert to HTML5. No more Flash. I love applause. So we did convert, so more of the iPad planning. People like using their tablets and using AirWave Visual RF planning. So you will see some of these features that we added in here. We looked at UCC, be able to see who's on a call. Also, we added AppRF, being able to see what applications, not that I want to snoop on Aruba employees looking at Facebook or anything, but you could, if you're having some issue and you're seeing certain application being used a lot, you could pretty much see what the applications are. For example, here, Facebook. You can see which users are actually contributing to Facebook. And the good news is it's all green and orange, it's not red. So red is essentially saying there's a threshold to it and people are using it a lot.
I'm not on that.
What's that? You're
I'm
definitely
not on
it.
this report, yeah.
There is a red one there, actually. It's kind of
But
hidden.
it's definitely just to give you an idea on the location and the applications that are being used. This is a new overlay that we added along with the UCC overlay that we have. And the client health overlay is something that you've seen before, where looking at a floor plan and seeing which clients are having problems, looking at regions of badness of clients, and that gives you a quick overall view of the RF health of the floor plan itself.
So I understand not having the link integration data from other infrastructure manufacturers, but the other manufacturers that do deep packet inspection that you do support in AirWave, do you get that application data pulled back into AirWave so that you can see similar?
Not currently, no.
Not currently, okay.
Yeah, we do it only for Aruba devices. So that was pretty much Visual RF. I did want to go into some of the new dashboards that we added. We did have the application RF dashboard. This is based on the DPI data, some of the data that was seen on a Visual RF flow plan. You should be able to see the top 10 applications for the 2 hours, which is a little slow. And hopefully it'll come up, but you can see which applications, which destinations are consuming. You can actually drill down into it, look at, say, maybe Google, look at the applications, look at what the devices that they're running and the destinations. So this is pretty straightforward in terms of giving you the application level data. But then in the new release, we also added an application report. So being able to say what the top applications destinations are broken down by a device type, knowing what the Apple iPhone users are using to the SSID to the role as well. So that is there in the application level data. We did add a new dashboard, which we call the RF capacity. So one thing we started hearing is as people are getting to a 11N to 11AC migration, how do I know which networks to migrate to 11AC? Where are my capacity areas? Obviously, being 11AC, we have so many of those 11AC APs are not having capacity issues in order to make this dashboard look better. But what this is trying to tell you is the radios that are reaching their capacity for a extended period of time, not just a blip of 90% channel utilization, but someone who says my channel utilization is high for an extended period of time. And the way we're doing this is we know these APs are not busy all the time. Like in an enterprise, it's probably 8 to 5. In classrooms, it's probably the same time, but in dorms, it's from 9 to midnight or 2 a.m. So we are taking the channel utilization values to find out if that radio is busy or not, and if it crossed a certain threshold. And that's how we are able to say whether those radios are green or whether they're radios that are actually reaching their capacity for an extended period of time. So this radio, as you can see, the max utilization, the 1341 AP126, it reached was 89%, and it was for 72% of the time. So that's a good candidate to say, is it a migration to 11AC, or are we adding more APs to increase the density at that point?
Have you run any data sets using this specific way of viewing the world at a stadium, perhaps? Very tight time, hour and a half,
Yes.
2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting you mentioned that we had to do that over the earthquakes game over the weekend. And we are studying the data right now in terms of the LPVs, and you will see that this chart will show you those density, because we know that it's just being used for those 3 hours or 4 hours, and then it reaches the capacity itself. So
Yes,
we
you
can
already
actually
knew
tell.
that, and then what triggered the question was, oh yeah, maybe I need to upgrade my APs or add more of them, and how do you correlate that in great data back into how do we fix the design?
Right now, there's no automated way. It's still manual, but that's something that we are looking at, because first, for identifying the devices that have reached the capacity, and then next, how does it feed into a design, or how does it automate some kind of Visual RF design process where you can feed that into your map, right, and a Visual RF plan. And that's our plan. That's kind of on the roadmap, but we don't have it right now. That's a very good point. The other thing is the scatter charts. We love our scatter charts. And so here you can see the radios that are at a utilization, and if the utilization is because of the clients. So being able to correlate utilization with clients, because the other reason we know that the radios can be busy is RF interference. So this one gives you, for example, if I hover over this radio and I click on it, I want to see why this radio is having high capacity without having any clients. And as you can see here, it's having really high utilization, but it's also having interference and other attributes being high. Or like IT mentioned, we do have these QA labs which are dense with APs. So you'll see that they're just listening to one another, and that's causing the high interference. All right. How are we on time?
Problem, you said we can go to 1, so we've got 20 minutes left.
20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So some things we've done is the RF capacity. Network deviations is another interesting chart. So this was kind of a feature where we said it's really useful to know when there are anomalies in my network. How do I know I have a certain number of clients and all of a sudden either there's a town hall meeting in a specific location or something else is happening, all of a sudden I have very high number of clients, and that's what this network deviations is about, is finding those anomalies in the network and finding when it suddenly increases beyond the normal range. So we look at the past 20 weeks of data and say the clients that are connected today is far more than what it is, and we call that a network deviation. Here you can see this black line is essentially your average for the last 20, 30 weeks, and the blue line is essentially something that's exceeding that normal, and it's a deviation on the network itself. RF performance, going back to a question about clients and being able to look at the clients and getting more troubleshooting information, this gives you a big distribution of the health data, being able to look at the clients that are having bad health. So this is a good way of approaching where you know that a certain location is complaining about client problems, and you can drill down into that specific location, and you can look at what the client health distribution is, the SNR distribution, the speed. But also what's important is being able to look at the distribution of the clients. You actually see that we are starting to see the 11 AC 40 megahertz and 80 megahertz clients. So you'll see the number of clients that are actually starting to use the new AC laptops. And that's also useful information, because as that number increases, then you're thinking about capacity and 11 AC APs and other things. And this has the same kind of drill down into a specific folder, being able to look at specific issues into that folder itself. So that was kind of a quick overview. Anything specific you guys want to cover? Or Rocky, do we have anything else we want to cover as part of the AirWave session?
I would ask the delegates, obviously beyond just Link. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to know a little bit more about the backend infrastructure of AirWave.
Yeah, sure.
What are you using, actually, if you could talk on that? Is this
whiteboard.
looking at a full corporate end right now, or is this a kind of a lab environment? Or
So this is our corporate,
okay,
but it's not our IT amp. This is our salespeople amp, where they use it for demo.airwave.com. We are not given as much access into the IT server because they use it for their own management. So we use this more for a demo system. We do have all the corporate locations. We do have some of the remote locations, RAPs as well, being monitored here. So not as many, though, 251. But we do have customers who have 10,000, 20,000 APs. And so we are working on a clustering architecture to support that scale, and that's coming out later this year in terms of being able to take a cluster of nodes and support more than APs on a single server. So I can explain the architecture. I don't have any slides.
Maybe just some what's in behind the scenes, what's the hardware like? I understand it's a virtual infrastructure, but
well, more to the point, why is AirWave's performance so awesome?
Yeah, it is mind-boggling. It's like fast.
That's what I want to hear every day now. I can't say that we don't have customer problems. So.
Well, no, but it's true, right? I mean, compare, from a competitive perspective, right? I mean, it just whomps all over everybody else.
I mean,
we do
we've
require
seen a couple
hardware
of them this week, and you just fast.
This is leaps and bounds,
Even this, I complain, my visual RF team constantly gets complaints. It's too slow. It's slow. You need to speed up, because a lot of things can be done in the background with all the technology we have. So hardware is definitely something we're greedy about. We do specify the hardware. We're very strict about it. Customers come back and say, yeah, it is a little more, but we're like, if you want to keep historical data, you want all these services to run, we do require beefy hardware. And
so give us an example of what do you got? What do you got going?
1,000
a
APs.
whiteboard if you want to scribble.
Yeah,
going?
I'm not a big hardware person, but we have about 64 gigs of RAM, and I can show you our demo server itself, our hardware that we have.
Perfect.
And we monitor all this data, by the way, because the first thing we do when customers have any kind of UI issues or performance issues is look at what their servers are. So here you're looking at an 8-core box, and we have about 24 gigs. This will probably be enough for 1,000 to 1,500 APs installation. It's a physical box.
So-
it is a physical box.
In the field, one of my larger customers, about 2,500 APs, and they're at 96 gigs of RAM, lots and lots of disk space. So it's hungry, and they're running on bare metal. They aren't running it in a VM.
The VM, the only catch with the VM is we are heavy into disk IOPS, and as I understand, you can, allocate that kind of disk IOPS very easily. So we have customers who run it on a SAN. It's backed by a SAN, and they're very happy with it. So
Ours is all virtualized on 10 gig iSCSI to the same.
Go ahead.
Did you mention, do you have UI issues or was that PI issues?
I'd love to bash up on that. No, I'm kidding.
I have to tell you, I understand about your specs.
We've got an answer about our corporate specs here.
At Aruba, we have it all virtualized. It's on a 10 gig iSCSI backbone into a storage array, running SAS disks behind it. I think it has roughly 90. It's way over provision for what it does. I think we have about 96 gig of memory. Dedicated.
96 gigs, we would go with at least a 4,000 to 5,000 AP box.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, that's the resources he's talking about, because we provision a server, but that's kind of where we normally say 4,000 to 5,000 max on a box, and we specify the, if you have SSDs, even better with the disk, but we are greedy about the disk especially, and the RAM and the CPU as well. Yes.
Do you push out like configuration templates with AirWave?
We do. I think it's slightly different than how other products do. We don't do partial config. We do the entire configuration, and we expect it to be in compliance.
Do you have like accounting that would let you know if something was changed?
Yeah, definitely. We have alerts for it. We say,
So if you actually, if something changed, you actually would know about it, unlike something else.
yeah, you would. Yeah, what would happen is you can set how periodically you want to audit the configuration, and when the periodic auditing happens, you can send an alert saying this configuration is changed. We have actually a couple of customers who use it where they want to discourage people from getting to the controller directly and making changes, and it's always, in a contention.
Approach, I wish some other people would adopt that.
Yeah, so we do have reports as well that gives you a history of what happened, but yeah, those features are available.
We have a lot of clients. One of my bigger clients, they have their help desk view that is very specifically only to go in and diagnose end user issues. They have no view into configuration. They have absolutely no way to change the controller configuration. So it is that tiered view. Does that answer the question? Okay. Yeah.
All the products are good, it's just some are better than others.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any other questions? Architecture, do you guys want me to drop something, how a clustering looks, or a single server, what are the processes running?
If you want to do
Would
some
that help?
whiteboarding, we'll be more than happy.
They love whiteboards.
Check that out.
Well,
Go to it.
Yes.
and in particular, I don't necessarily know that I have a question, but a comment from a version upgrade perspective, right? When you upgrade from one version of AirWave to the other, that process is a shining example for everybody in the industry. I wish
Thank you.
everybody did upgrade processes exactly like how easy it is to upgrade an AirWave server.
Thank you.
It's
That's
one
a big
command,
compliment.
stupid, simple, done.
It is important for us. It is important because one is to be able to give you an upgrade path, not to say that you have to be on a certain version to do certain version, that kind of stuff. And the second thing is to make it such that it doesn't become a customer pain point, because we do get a lot of releases out. AirWave is very aggressive about either the patch fixes or like new features, and want to make this as iterative as possible. So which means that we have to make that upgrade process easy. Like we have to, we get new features. So we're going to release the clustering in fall. We'll get a new release by the end of this year. So we do want people to adopt. And the adoption on AirWave customers is pretty high, actually. When we release new FCS software, the adoption is pretty high. We are planning to, right now the upgrade is all on CLI. We're planning to also add it from the web UI.
Nice.
So that also will help in terms of customers just having that right, experience.
So personally, I've never had to back up an AirWave instance, blow it away, build a new AirWave instance, and then restore it.
Awesome. I have to warn you, but there is some instances where we have to do it sometimes in a cent upgrade, or this clustering will be a big involved, like going from an old architecture to new. We will have to do that, but for the most part, you do not have to take a backup, restore it. In fact, people, even floor plans, like people get from other NMS systems importing floor plans because that's a laborious process. Floor plans, APs, all that is time consuming, and that is pretty easily importable on AirWave. We make every effort to accommodate these customers.
Yeah, like I said, one of the big things I see is working for automotive manufacturers. We've got groups all over the globe, depending on where you're at, EU, AP, North America. If somebody makes a change, I would like to know, because sometimes people make a wrong change and that gets replicated. It could lead to something not very good.
Yeah, agreed.
Or at least alert me when something's changed. I mean, it's just, it's not an enterprise system if you can't tell me who made what change.
Yeah, and that's another thing we keep as well, the audit log changes, is to be able to track through that, and also.
That's just, yeah, that's wonderful.
Cool.
So going back to what Sam was saying, I've never upgraded a AirWave instance. When you say stupid easy, what do you mean? Is it just...
Yeah, you go to the CLI and you type AMP.
Start AMP upgrade,
start AMP upgrade
minus V, and then a version number.
Oh.
And hit enter and walk away. And you come back and it's done.
And it'll prompt you for your support
Yeah, for your
login,
support
even
contract, yeah.
if you don't want to SCP up the image, it'll prompt you for your support login and download it.
Yeah, it goes, gets everything from the cloud, everything that it needs from the version that you're at to the version that you want to go to.
It does everything. It stops the services back, installs the software, does the database migration, starts up the services. So everything's done, and it'll show you a progress while things are happening as well.
Nifty.
All right.
Anything else in general, delegates?
Saw your 210s were out today. Is that right?
I don't know that we talk about those yet.
It was on Twitter.
Oh, the 210?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew about the 205. See what it's like to be in the field?
It's too fun. I'll let Ozer and others deal with that. Yeah.
There's
any feedback on the link piece that we talked about at all?
Other than Microsoft should have given you a commission.
Well, and I guess specifically as far as the link components are concerned, that not as far as AirWave is concerned, I suppose for the link API integration, the term SDN has been thrown around way too much, right? Yeah. You could have not said the word SDN and said, our magic link integration box, and the exact same slides would have been the same. Mm-hmm. What about SDN that is not link centric is Aruba doing?
Okay, this is a little future looking, but as part of our next generation architecture, we are definitely looking at use cases where SDN might make sense for the access layer. Today, everybody's talking about SDN, but it's more prevalent in the data center world. From an access standpoint, UCC is probably one of those applications. It's a killer application where it makes sense to intelligently route traffic based on topology and so on and so forth. So all I can share at this point is it's definitely something we are looking into, and UCC is probably one of the use cases that makes a lot more sense compared to some of the other applications at the access layer.